Yo, what's up, everybody? Break Free Worldwide episode. Who's counting? This episode is on biting.
Biting.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this.
I hope y'all know what that is, because a lot of people don't really know. A lot of people think biting is okay nowadays.
Well, we ain't gonna discriminate. We're gonna talk about all types of biting.
All right, so what you got, man?
You know what I'm saying? So,
what you got?
First of all, it's whack. And if you bite, you're whack. All right,
let's get into the real reason why we want to talk about biting, because there's a lot of people out there that say it's okay, or I was influenced by this move and that's why I do it, or they told me it was okay. I don't know. What is your take? Why are we talking about it? Why do people need to know more about it?
I think we chose this topic, and I think people want to hear about it, specifically in the breaking scene, is because biting is so prevalent nowadays. And people need to know the different perspectives on biting, because I think it's something that is not so black and white, and you can't really, determine just off top if something is, what some person might interpret as biting, some people might think it's influence. So I think it's important to share different perspectives and learn, what one b-boy thinks biting is and what the other b-boy biting is, and come to a consensus on what should be done and what shouldn't be done. So we can start off with just, defining it and what you think the difference between particularly biting and influence is.
Yeah, for me personally, I think biting is when you absolutely just take someone's style, set, or signature moves and put it into your own words or your own style or your own, content or whatever you want to call it. So if you're doing exactly the same thing another dancer does, then I think that you've really bitten that style. You've really, chomped on that style. You took that style and you tried to become this person. Mm-hmm. Early on when I first started breaking, I remember that if I even felt like I was doing someone else's move, I would just totally get away from it because I didn't want to feel like anybody else. I wanted to feel like myself. And I think today a lot of people are watching lots of footage. They're watching lots of competitions nowadays, and maybe subconsciously they pick up, someone's style, or maybe they're just watching and saying, hey, I want that, and they're taking it. But biting, to me, is when you take it 100% and then implement it to your own thing. And I think that, for me, that is a no-no. You should not do that. I mean, the beauty about breaking is that it represents individualism. It represents you and what you create and what you bring to the table. So immediately when you become or you implement something else or you become this other person that is not you, then you're faking the funk. You're trying to be someone that you're not. So what's the purpose if you are trying to take someone's style? What's the purpose if you are trying to take someone's move? There's nothing there for you. That belongs to somebody else. And so I personally don't think that you should do it. I know that we've talked about influence and that there are people that have been influenced by other people's style. And I think that's cool. You gotta be motivated somewhere. So looking up to somebody or role modeling, someone's dance or how they present themselves, that's cool and all. But as long as you don't directly take what they do.
Yeah. You brought up, you said something about subconscious biting, and I'd like to talk about that because I think that's interesting, and I think what most people, see today, and if you have somebody who says, man, the scene looks the same, every b-boy's dancing the same, I think that's the form of biting that everybody is talking about. So when what I interpret as subconscious biting is, you said it's a no-no to, in your head, see something and be like, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do it,
Right.
And that's blatant biting. But subconscious biting might be, that's where the line blurs between influence and biting, I think, is like you see something and it's stored in your head subconsciously somewhere. And as you're practicing, it comes out and, you might not even realize it. Or you might get the instance, and people bring this up a lot, where it's like, people who think kind of the same on the same level and might have similar styles on different corners of the world might create a move in the same manner, in the same style, but it wasn't blatant and it wasn't considered biting. But I think it's I've thought about this a lot and I think people should start viewing it as why subconscious biting or subconscious taking of moves is so prevalent nowadays. And I think it is prevalent. And I think the reason it is because of the climate of the scene and the current trends and what everybody is trying to do. So I think we need to, B-boys should ask themselves, like, what is their goal in breaking, what it is that they're trying to do. And across the board, across the world, I think the majority of what people are trying to do is win competitions nowadays. And if it's not winning competitions, it's, we have to admit, people are trying to get likes on social media.
Maybe that's where it comes, what you and I, Palmer, talked about kind of like in the podcast, where maybe it's the formula needed, right? So they see, other B-boys, other B-girls do a certain way of breaking, right? When I say do a certain way of breaking,
approach.
They're approaching the competition world, their dance world, the competition world, in a way that it's winning, right? It's winning for them. And so other people see it, and so maybe that's what I need to do to win.
Yeah.
So they start to implement these little takes here and there. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna take that. That's what I mean by takes. And they try to put it in their rounds in hopes of like becoming a winning B-boy or B-girl.
I think
but essentially that's subconscious biting.
Yeah, I think if you box breaking into a finite category of how it should be done, which means like, foundation, top rock, da-da-da, you go down the list, that's a finite, like, it's not unlimited. You basically just box breaking in for it to be this thing and this entity. Mm-hmm. So within that finite number of categories, you will have a finite number of moves and possibilities to create something. So if everyone is approaching this dance, top rock, go down, footwork, freeze, dynamics, end on beat, then you're going to, things are going to cross and people are going to subconsciously start doing the same moves and start having the same styles.
Yeah.
And, so I think it comes down to this. If you want an original style, if you want to develop original moves, you have to have an original approach to this dance, first and foremost.
Yeah.
So, not even to factor in the music. So if the majority of what people see nowadays is breaking rounds in competition, so whether it's in top 10 highlights or, actual battles on YouTube, you don't go to YouTube and you don't see very much like cypher highlights or you have to go to Instagram, somebody like Palmer, to see him break in his garage and see breaking outside of the element of a competition, big floor, big lights, same format of music.
Yeah.
And the point that I'm trying to make is when you start to incorporate the music into it, and we have to admit, the majority of what's played at breaking competitions nowadays, and as we start to go deeper into live streams and copyright issues, there is a formula to the music as well. And, and most of the time it's an 8 count to a crash on the 1, and people highlighting it on that, So you can have different types of feelings and vibes, but if the approach of the music along with the approach of the dance is the same, you start to have this, homogeneous mixture of styles that
you start to see the same
thing.
And
it's the same thing. And so you basically box breaking in to a limited amount of moves and creativity and approaches and styles to be made into this dance. So I think that's the problem that we've come across nowadays, and that's why you have this formula type of breaking.
And I think there's other ways to look at biting too, because I know early on when I started breaking, I would think, like I would come up with a move and then I'd be like, dope, I feel comfortable, I like this move. I don't feel like anybody else is doing it, but who knows? There's probably somebody, halfway around the world that probably came up with a very similar move, but to me at that point it's like, all right, who puts it out first? Who does that? Who
does it better?
Who does it better? Who makes a name for themselves doing this move? Because I've talked to Crazy Legs before about biting, and he doesn't really agree with it. He doesn't really agree with like, it's like what he always says, like, what is biting? Yeah. Because essentially everything comes from some type of foundation.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
So he pioneered windmills, right?
Yeah. So now everybody does windmills, and so everybody's a biter.
So that's a question that's brought up a lot, is like, when does a move become bitten so much that it becomes part of the foundation?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I remember. I'm not the first person to do Air Baby, but like, late '90s, early 2000s, I would say pioneering the one-handed Air Baby lift, come back down. I was the first one to do it, and then a lot of people just started coming on board and doing it. And after a few amount of years, I kind of got tired of it because it wasn't special to me anymore. So a lot of people kind of took it upon themselves to flip it, and I thought that was great. I didn't really trip on it. Other people made a big deal, like, well, why aren't you calling these people biters and all this stuff? At the end of the day, like, I don't care, but if you are taking it from somebody, you have to admit where you got it from.
Yeah.
You have to admit it. Now, I'm not saying biting is okay, because I think, like I said, I think it's a no-no. You should not do it. But if you are doing it, then acknowledge where you got it.
Yeah.
And I think that will make you a bigger person. I think a lot of B-boys and B-girls don't acknowledge what they're watching, don't acknowledge what they're influenced by, don't acknowledge the moves and the styles that they're taking and they're ripping off from people that they've worked so hard for.
Yeah.
So, and then how does it make them feel? But if it makes you feel good and it gives you props and respect from your peers or the people watching you, like, come on, man, own up to that.
Well, it's
I think
a
that's
word
really
to,
important.
To also bring up that, and when people are normally taught this and that their teacher is good, the topic is brought up about flipping things, and that's like the hip hop way. You think about even in the music, hip hop music, sampling, that's the hip hop way. It's taking something that you're influenced by and doing it in a quote unquote hip hop way, flipping it to your ability. So that exists, and I think that's kind of when people don't flip things in the correct way, or it's worth to even ask what's the correct way to flip things, But you have to take some. If you are going to be influenced by something, the hip hop way and the correct way to do it is to do it in your own way and to interpret it and bring something new to the table that pushes the artistry of the culture forward.
Yeah, I've seen people like literally do things like move for move, footwork to footwork. I mean, from top to bottom to finish have the same.
Yeah.
I've seen the exact same thing.
Yep.
And that's what I'm talking about. Is like, if you're doing that, then that is a whole nother level. But if you're doing what you're talking about, where you're kind of sampling or flipping something, then that's different. Is because you're trying to put your spin, your approach on this influence, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be influenced by people, because without influence, it's hard to find inspiration.
Yeah.
So you need to be influenced by it. So, draw some lines, set some boundaries, and set some limits, because I think all aspiring B-boys and B-girls are going to struggle with this. I remember meeting some people early on when I first started breaking, and I would see them do moves from videos, and they would be like, I would tell them, like, hey, man, that's this person's move. And they're like, well, I thought that's what videos were for. It's just so we can learn and take their moves. So, that's another thing, too, is like, are there enough videos that kind of discuss this,
Mm-hmm.
Or is it something that people should just know walking into the culture or walking into the community? So another reason why we're doing this video is just to get a different perspective and a different insight in how we view breaking, biting, and all these other things that we're going to continue to talk about. But it's important to know that there is content, there are resources out there that are educating and trying to teach you guys that, hey, this is the way you do things, or this is the way you don't do things. But ultimately, it's on you and how you view it, right? Because we could have our perspective, but doesn't mean it's the correct one. Jeremy can have his perspective, it doesn't mean it's the correct one, because that's always debatable. But at the same time, I will say this again.
We right.
Biting is biting. If you take someone's stuff, you take someone's moves, you take someone's style, and it's obvious, then it's an obvious bite.
Yeah.
But if you're highly influenced by someone and you look up to someone and you love the way they approach life, dance, then that's different, But as long as you're not looking the same, I think that's something to really think about. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, another way to do it correctly, not do biting correctly, but another thing to bring up is paying homage. And I think there's a correct way to do it too. And when I speak about paying homage, it's like, say something classic and legendary. Like I remember when I battled you in the final battle at what was the event? Art of War.
Yeah.
I did your V freeze against you.
Mm-hmm.
So this was boop,
yeah,
like that, right? And I've even used it outside of battling you, but like in the conversation of a battle, or what I'm saying with my dance, it's like, this is Moy, bam, so I think there's a correct way of doing that too. Obviously you being my teacher, And if there's B-boys and B-girls have a teacher out there, you can pay homage to your teachers by doing their moves, but obviously try and flip it. But you can also look at it in a musical way too, like bringing up Jay-Z. Like Jay-Z, I remember coming up, there was a lot of conversation in the early 2000s about him using Biggie's lines. Like he would take Biggie's lines and use them, but he would use them in a way that's obvious, where he's paying respect and he's paying homage to Biggie.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way that you can do someone else's moves as well. If you do it in the correct way, paying homage and
that's
paying
what
respect.
I was referring to when you said, like, acknowledge. There's nothing wrong, again, if you're influenced or you love an idea or a concept that someone is throwing out or the way they do things, but acknowledge where it comes from. Because I think that makes you a better person, and that makes you a better dancer, is when you can acknowledge that you're being taught by people, whether it's a subconscious pickup or you're directly trying to be influenced by that style. Just acknowledge it. Yeah. It makes a big deal internally. It does.
I would say too,
and externally.
It's not more so about what's not important is the actual move, but it's what's around that move, what follows that move, and what precedes that move. So what I mean by that is like pretty much the context of it. So we talked about homage right now. So obviously, like if you look at a round where you do like a classic Maurizio move or a classic Crazy Legs or Frosty Freeze, you see a lot of people pay homage to Frosty Freeze once he passed away. Rest in peace, Frosty Freeze. So that's obvious. Like somebody's paying homage to Frosty when they do that. But like, look at those rounds and look what preceded it and look what happened after it. If it was original movement, homage to Frosty, and then original movement.
That makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Your storytelling.
Yeah. So, but if it's like I see B-boys that like it's not so easy to tell, but they take little bits from everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be like Top Rock, Cloud, Go Down, Moy. Footwork, Why Not, Freeze, Boo Rock, like stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so then it's like. Yeah. It's hard if you don't really know your stuff. It's hard for people to tell that. And I'll be honest too. I'll just say a lot of times people like that win competitions like that. Man, is they boom 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 take this.
I would say a lot of times.
A lot of times, bro. And it's like I think it's worth to bring up this point. Is like I've thought about this a lot since I started teaching. 6 years ago, and I would teach students. When I was taught originality is the first priority. The number one thing. So before you worry about making your stuff look sharp, before you worry about getting dynamic, before you even worry about leveling your stuff up, you have to develop an original style. Number one. And it's safe to say that if you were taught by like any people who know about this culture and who are reputable B-boys, that's probably the first thing that you were taught as well.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like contradictory whenever you tell your students this, and then you send them off to competitions, and then originality, we have to admit, is probably one of the very last things that's looked at whenever people are judged.
Today, I don't even think that originality is really looked at.
Yeah.
I've judged major competitions, and I feel like some of the judges were like, well, we know that this comes from here, but man, he just did it so well, and then the other guy just didn't do so well, so you kind of have to vote for that.
Yeah.
And it contradicts itself, but at the same time, I know it sounds bad, but okay, I get where you're coming from. But like you're saying, it's not being prioritized. Originality is not being prioritized. For me, on the other hand, I'm just like, no, like that doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. No, this guy did this guy's round. He did this guy's moves. And it doesn't sit with me. It doesn't sit well with me.
And also to admit too, I don't judge that often, but when I do, I have to admit too, it's difficult.
It's very difficult.
It's difficult to discern and understand these things that we're talking about on the spot. So like if you're a judge and you look at an example of a couple of rounds, like say you have a round that's purely original, like that's obviously, man, this guy is himself. This is purely original, but maybe his form, sharpness wasn't as clean. And then he goes against somebody that's like the thing that I talked about earlier, piece from everybody else.
But he does it so well.
So well. Like, yeah, like it's worth talking about like what should win, And I think it's going to be different answers across the board. Yeah. But going back to like this subconscious
And then again, it's a competition, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Man.
it's a game.
It's
People have to admit
entertainment.
that, you know.
It's entertainment.
But I think there's a choice to make, you know, and I think we spoke about this on past podcasts, past episodes. Is like you can have a choice to either play the game,
or change the game,
and kind of like disrupt the system, and you know, be original, but also execute and also be sharp and all this, you know. But I think it also is good to promote and talk about, and even if you're a judge, make a stand. You know what I'm saying? Like, make a stand and vote for originality over and make it the number one priority. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not to say to dog everything else and say, you know, all these other things are not important. But I think if we really want to push the culture forward, originality is the only thing to push it forward. You know, otherwise, we can start spinning faster. We can start hitting more moves. We can start doing harder moves.
Yeah.
But things will never be different. We will never see new ideas. We will never see the artistry pushed forward unless originality is prioritized as the number one thing.
Yeah, and in my advice, you know, to all the young B-boys and B-girls, even older B-boys and B-girls, is just do your research, study the dance, study the culture, study the community, know where things come from, know who invented what, who laid out the foundation, who pioneered what. I mean, this is really, really important because I think the goal of a B-boy is to be a pioneer. And so you have to change the game. You have to bring something to the table. And if you're always doing what everybody else is doing, then you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
You're not changing the game. So my advice is to all aspiring, you know, from young or even B-boys that have been in the game for a long time, just continue to change the game, continue to pioneer, you know, because biting, it sucks to say this, but it's going to continue to happen. And the reason why it's going to continue to happen is because there aren't any educational components or material or enough material that is discussing these things. And so continue to just be focused in what's happening within the community. Watch where things come from, know where things come from, and try to implement different things yourself. Like for me, I told you as a kid, one of the first things that I implemented was like, if I even felt like someone else, I would change it up. I would change it up because I did not want to even feel like someone else. I wanted to feel like me. So start to feel like yourself first. Start to want to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that doesn't say you can't look up to these people. I said it earlier. Be influenced. Influence creates inspiration. So have that influence, have that inspiration, but just be thoughtful about the process. Be thoughtful about the moves that you're doing, the style that's being developed, and just be you.
Yeah, and I'll say this to end this. I want to speak to everybody in the scene, and when I say everybody, I mean every single role, and that's judge, host, competitor, spectator, cipher guy, whatever role there is in the scene. This is for you, and this is my message for you, is to start reading this dance. And what I mean by that is start really digging deep, and when you watch this dance and you digest this dance and you're looking at it, don't look at it for surface value. Because if you look at it for surface value, you're only holding this culture back, and you're not digging deep and going to the place that's needed for us to advance the artistry. And when we talk about biting, it's very easy to discern and be able to tell when someone's biting a move, but it's hard to understand when someone's biting a style and biting an approach. And I think it's happening a lot. And I think it's because us as spectators, us as competitors, us as judges, we are not digging deep and really looking to see if people are biting more than just moves. So when you go out and you dance, have an original approach. Have an original beginning origin point of this dance whenever you step out on that floor. Mm-hmm. Don't just try and craft a perfect round. Don't try and craft perfect top rock, go down, footwork, freeze, end on beat, hit a couple beats, get a crowd applause. If everybody is doing that, then we just stay at the same level, and we might just start spin faster. We might just start do more flips and start to do crazier combos, but nothing is added to this vocabulary. It's not pushed forward.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be different. Be different. That's what makes the dance, again, so beautiful and so unique, is that there are a whole bunch of different people in this community. So be different. Go out there and just try different. Be different. And if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. It doesn't matter. But the beauty of it is that you're different. And I think that a lot of us B-boys and B-girls forget to want to be this way because we're trying to conform to how people want to see us to win. So I think you're winning automatically by default when you're just being different. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
You know, biting is going to continue to happen. Style taking is going to continue to be.
Not if we have anything to do with it.
We're trying to change the game.
You see this right here? This little area right above the Gucci. You see this right here? You know what this is? This is heart. This is heart right here. You see this? Make it beat.
My heart's like actually over here.
That's weird. You might want to get that checked out.
No, the heart's right here, bro. You tripping?
No, the left chesticle.
No, it's right here in the middle. What are you talking about? Anyways,
break from the heart.
Break from the heart.
We love
be
you.
different. Vibe different.
Don't bite.
Act different. Approach different.
Much love, baby.
Peace.
Peace. We love you, weirdos. Keep being weird. Time to eat some tacos.